you're watching on the Salem News Channel or if you're listening in your car on any of my 480 plus affiliates, welcome. There is a big war going on in Lebanon today. Yesterday, Lebanon's Hezbollah militia, the terrorist organization funded and organized by Iran, fired more than 200 rockets, including some long-range rockets at Israel. The IDF responded with more than 4,000 attacks. I believe it was 1,600 targets, 4,000 missiles launched across Lebanon this morning. It's already afternoon, I should say, this afternoon in Lebanon. The Hezbollah launched another 100 rockets at Israel, and a second wave of airstrikes is happening. More than 500 have been killed, according to some people in Lebanon's health ministry, but health ministries like the Gaza Health Ministry, we don't know who's running them and whether they're propaganda. No doubt people have died. The IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, has released a picture of Hezbollah munitions in the homes, many of which are now destroyed, and the fighting will go on today. One U.S. official has told the Times of Israel that Hezbollah has been taken back 20 years. In the damage that Israel has done, that would take it back to before the 2006 Israel-Lebanon war. This is going to go on for some time because Israel has to return more than 80,000 people to their homes in the north. They've got to reopen schools. They've got to rebuild homes. They've got to rebuild businesses. They've got to get their country back from Hezbollah terrorists. Remember, Hezbollah began the war on October 8th after Hamas began its war in the south on October 7th. Israel did nothing. There was a ceasefire in both places. There was a UN Security Council resolution demanding that Hezbollah withdraw behind the Litani River, which they did not do. Now Israel is doing what it has to do in order to win the election. Now, Hamas, much weaker than Hezbollah. Hezbollah has up to 80,000 unguided rockets, up to, and those are short range, up another 80,000 rockets unguided long range. They have about 40,000 ballistic missiles. They can go even further. They're not guided. The real problem with Hezbollah is 400 to 500 both short and intermediate range ballistic missiles that are guided. That's up to 150,000 missiles. And so Israel is methodically moving through and destroying. It has great intelligence, obviously. When the pagers and the walkie-talkies exploded last week, it gave them a map of who, what, where is in the Hezbollah terrorist network, and they're not going to have to look far. Israel's intelligence is just remarkable. The Wall Street Journal wrote a story this morning, the vast Hezbollah arsenal awaiting Israel in Lebanon. Israel doesn't really care how big their arsenal is because they're shooting it down and they're destroying it on the ground. This morning, I have a new Fox News column, which is titled, What If Israelis Could Vote in the U.S. Elections? I spent yesterday afternoon before a wonderful dinner with friends. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt is traveling. So I have wonderful friends. Mark and Kim and Brian and JJ fed me last night. We were talking about a number of different things, but I came home and made sure that the Fox News column was filed, and its title is, What If Israelis Could Vote in the U.S. Elections? So during the afternoon yesterday, I had spent time looking at where is their public opinion polling in Israel about what they think about America. I could come up with the Jewish People Policy Institute, which did a survey in July before President Biden dropped out. That's before Kamala Harris showed up. 51% preferred Trump, 35% preferred Biden, 14% had no opinion. However, I think ever since Kamala Harris has begun her very, very transparent anti-Israel policy, Israel has the right to defend itself, but it's really just doing too much. No, it's not. It has to remove terrorists on its border. And if she doesn't think Israel can remove terrorists on its border, what is she going to do about the cartels flooding this country with fentanyl? What is she going to do about spies in our country? What is she going to do about foreign threats? Not much. So why Donald Trump needs to win. The Fox News column is on my X, linked on my X column, X feed. Please go over and follow me at Hugh Hewitt. Benjamin Netanyahu, according to the Financial Times, has rebounded in the polls after aggressive Israeli operations. Likud is back on top as the most popular party. We're 2 years away from elections in Israel. So it doesn't much matter. I just want you to know that after October 7th, as Israelis usually do, they blamed the incumbent party. They ignored that Naftali Bennett and the other guy, Lapid, were prime ministers for a year and a half before Netanyahu came back in the most recent elections. And most of them are mad at the Israeli Defense Forces, which failed terribly on October 7th. The leadership did. And now the Israeli Defense Forces are succeeding magnificently at extraordinary cost. More than 250 IDF soldiers have been killed in the operations in Gaza, as well as along the northern border. Many scores of Israelis have been injured and killed as well by rocket fire. There's a long story in the New York Times about Joe Biden wringing his hands and trying to do all that he can. Well, guess what? He can't do much. And you can't expect him to do much. There's, unfortunately, some sad audio of him yesterday, just incoherent. I think the president is incoherent all the time. Not incapacitated. He's been infirm for a long time. Now he is almost always incoherent when he talks for longer than a minute or without a teleprompter or goes off script. Doesn't mean he's incapacitated. 25th Amendment is there. Vice President Harris is not going to pull that trigger. In fact, she's going to go to the border today. According to the New York Times, quote, trying to cut into Trump's immigration edge. Do you really think that's going to work? Does anyone think Kamala Harris is going? Did you see yesterday they found more tape is surfacing? Her video library is extensive, and we're just going to begin to see it. Meanwhile, former President Trump was in Pennsylvania yesterday at Smithton and in Indiana, Pennsylvania. There's a town called Indiana in Pennsylvania. Don't you get confused. Steeler fans know that. Let's go to the Indiana, Pennsylvania rally, cut number 38.
Remember this. For a long time, she's been talking about her experience at McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's over the French fries. It was so hot. I think I'm going to go to a McDonald's next week someplace. I'm going to go. Might not be in your place. I'm going to go to a McDonald's, and I'm going to work the French fry job for about a half an hour. I want to see how it is. But she said she worked and she grew up in terrible conditions. She worked at McDonald's. It was such. She never worked there. And these fake news reporters will never report it. They don't want to report it because they're fake. They're fake.
Back to the fake news. And after the ABC Disney debate, which was a setup that did not have one question on China, I don't blame him. He did, however, talk about migration. Kamala going to the border. Donald says this, cut number 45.
Kamala has illegally flown in more than 500,000 migrants right when she was saying, no, we don't want to do that. And she's got, these guys actually want these people in our country. It's not even believable. Working with left-wing nonprofits to inundate Pennsylvania communities, changing the character of small towns and villages all over our country and changing them forever. They will never be the same. They will never be. Do you think Springfield will ever be the same? I don't think. The fact is, and I'll say it now, you have to get them the hell out. You have to get them out. I'm sorry. To get them out. Can't have it. Can't have it. They've destroyed it.
They are chanting, bring him back. Bring him back. Time for me to bring back Relief Factor. I got a lot coming up today. All right, Coach Urban Meyer's coming along in hour number 2. I have Brett Baer coming on in 3. Hung Cao is running for Senate in Virginia. We've got Nella Domenici running for Senate in New Mexico. We've got Byron York and David Drucker, of course, Brett Baer coming along. Tuesdays are always busy days. Yesterday, Donald Trump back in Pennsylvania, one of the 7 states that will decide this election. He was talking economics yesterday as well. Cut number 39.
Kamala Harris is the tax queen, and she's coming for your money, she's coming for your pensions, and she's coming for your savings unless you defeat her in November and want to take away your guns. Remember that. Always remember that. As president, I will keep Kamala's greedy hands out of your pockets, and we will deliver gigantic tax cuts. I gave you the largest tax cuts in history, and we are going to go further. That's what created the greatest economy. You know, when they say compare yourself now, but do something else. Compare costs now. Compare the cost of bacon with the cost of bacon 4 or 5 years ago. Compare the cost of just groceries. I mean, some of these things have gone up 4, 5, 6 times. Energy, interest rates. How about, I was at 2% interest rates. Now they're at 10%, but you can't get the money, so you got to keep going up. Okay, you're not at 10% if you can't get the money. We will have, I'm very proud of this, and then she copied me on one of them, only one. I'm waiting for the others. We will have no tax on tips. That was an easy one. We will have no tax on overtime. You work overtime. And for our seniors who have been decimated by the stupidity of inflation, these people, what they did to you on inflation, we will have no tax on Social Security benefits. No tax.
That is going to win a few seniors' votes. He kept talking economy, cut number 40. Now, cut number 40.
Kamala Harris has reportedly given a speech in Pittsburgh. You know, her speeches are very short. About her plan to, quote, build wealth. She doesn't know anything about building wealth. But she's been in office for 3.5 years. She's saying what she's going to do if she becomes president. But she's been there almost 4 years. She hasn't done anything except destroy our country with millions of people that shouldn't be here. And inflation. And inflation. What the damage that Sleepy Joe, you know, I'm tending to call him Sleepy Joe lately because I called him Crooked Joe. But now he's not like, is he, who's our president? We don't even have, do we have a president? Why doesn't he leave? Why doesn't he leave? Now think of it. Think of it. I call him Crooked Joe. That was very effective. It got him out of the race. I mean, guess what? No, we had a debate, and he didn't do too well in that debate. And they came to him and they said, you're down 21 points and you're going to lose. This can only happen to me. So I end up with somebody new. But here's the thing. All I have to do is expose her for what she is. She's a communist, okay? She's a communist. And this country is not ready for a communist and hopefully never will be, because that doesn't work. Kamala talks about all these things that she's going to do, but she's been here. Think of it. She's been here for almost 4 years and she's not done anything. I will do this. I will do that. I will do that. What the hell? She could do them today. You know, they talk about the border. Oh, we have a plan for the border. I didn't have any help. I had a very hostile Congress. And what I did is I said, close the border to the Border Patrol. They're great. And the border was closed.
That's pretty easy. Close the border. Cut number 41. He continued to focus on the economy and the fact that the vice president is going to give a speech on her economic plan, as though she has one. Cut 41.
Kamala's ruinous economic policies have already cost the typical household $29,000 through rampant inflation. $29,000 per household. She's a one-woman economic wrecking ball, and if she gets 4 more years...
I like that. I like that. Let me remind you, if you want to find out the variety of programs being put forward by conservative scholars, you go to 25truth.com. It's the truth about the Heritage Foundation, the sponsor of our show, and its plan called Project 2025, not Donald Trump's plan, but it explains the lies that have been put out there by the left about Project 2025. 25truth.com. Joined from Virginia by Captain Hung Cao. He is retired from the United States Navy. He's the GOP nominee for Senate. Good morning, Captain. Welcome back.
Good morning, Hugh. How are you doing today?
I am great. Tell us about the election. Voting has begun in Virginia. I hope you have a chase program underway.
Yes, well, obviously you see I'm in a hotel room because we're barnstorming Virginia. We've been doing this for the last 4 weeks with the governor. But you know what? So on Friday was the first day of early voting. They have 45 days, but they squeaked in one more day, so it's 46 now. And on the first day, there were 20,000 more voters than there were in 2020. And in
Oh,
2020, it was leaning 40% Democrat, but on Friday, it was leaning 16%. So we've closed the gap by 24% in just one day.
oh, that is terrific. Now, Captain Cow today, Kamala Harris is going to the border, and she's going to try and talk tough on immigration. A, do you think that's going to work? And B, does that issue matter in the Commonwealth?
It does matter in the Commonwealth, and I guess the word is going to be, better late than never. But she was the border czar. I've been to the border down there, and everybody's hurting. Americans are hurting because when, especially where she's going in Arizona. I was in Yuma, and 90% of all leafy vegetables are grown in Yuma, Arizona. And if they find an illegal alien sleeping in the field, they must burn that entire field because they don't know if that person brings any communicable diseases. So if you wonder why the cost of produce goes up, well, that's why. And how it affects
Cap,
Virginia, especially. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I want to ask about Virginia. All three of my children, six of my grandchildren live in the Commonwealth, and they all complain about the cost of groceries. Because, young families got to buy a lot of food. Do you hear that often on the trail?
Absolutely. I mean, Americans can't afford to put food on the table. They can't afford to put gas in their cars, and they can't afford to buy a home. And it's all because of this inflation. And some of that inflation is caused by, paying $1 billion or more per day to house and feed illegal aliens. I mean, they're being put in four-star hotels. They're being give, free money right off the bat, and we take care of them. In places like New York, they're prioritizing illegal aliens at the hospitals because they don't want to pay for overtime for translators. So between the hours of 9 to 5, they want to make sure they get all the people that don't speak English in there first, so that they don't have to pay for translators. The same in Virginia, in rural counties, when a law enforcement officer tries to arrest somebody for a misdemeanor, now it costs them more because they have to hire a translator in there to fill out the forms and to appear in court.
So, Captain, where are you going to be able to cut into there's a traditional blue advantage inside the Beltway in Virginia. There's a traditional red advantage in the military areas of Virginia. Where I know you're going everywhere, but how do you cut into the Democratic edge that you need to win?
So in 2020, when I ran for Congress in the 10th congressional district, which includes the infamous Loudoun County, I moved that needle 13%. From where Joe Biden won by 19%, I took it down to 6%. All I have to do is keep moving that needle. We won't win there, but we at least we can move the needle enough so that when the South comes out, like you said, Hampton Roads, which is very predominantly military, and Roanoke area, Southwest area like Hayside and Abingdon and Bristol, they'll come out. And right now we're leading by over 30% in those areas. That will make up the difference for the Northern Virginia tranche, and that's how we're going to win.
It's
I mean,
also
we've
an
seen this.
extraordinarily expensive state. Have the groups come in and let's get your website out there. I think it's hung for VA, HUNGFORVA.com. But how do people contribute small dollars to you? Because your dollar spent goes a lot further than a big 501c4 money.
Yes, sir. No, absolutely. I mean, just look, if Comrade Bernie can amass $200 million from $20 donations, then surely we can do the same. It's very expensive to advertise in Virginia. It's about $1.93 million per week. And, Tim
Ooh.
Kaine has unlimited.
We just lost the feed, but that's okay because I know what the website is hung for VA. Captain Cow is okay. You're still there, but we've lost your audio,
Oh,
Captain. I want to
oh.
try it again. What's the website?
It's hungforva.com.
There we go.
HUNGFORV.
And it's small dollars matter. I keep telling this audience again and again, we can win the Virginia race. A lot of people said no at the beginning, but they forget Ed Gillespie almost won his race, and there were no resources. All you need are resources. But how much a week is it in Virginia?
Almost $2 million per week.
Wow. Okay. Well, number one, last question. What is your primary ad appealing to? What is the number one thing you're talking about in your 30 to 60-second ads on television?
Well, it's really to introduce the audience to me. Tim Kaine's been around for 30 years, and I've been paid by the same American taxpayer, except he's got millions of dollars to show for it, and I have scars. So he's been feeding himself and taking care of himself and special interests. I've been fighting for the American people.
Captain, keep up the good fight. Keep coming back. Hungforva.com, HUNGFORVA.com. The Commonwealth, I can't wait to vote for you. I'll be back down to vote early in about a couple of weeks, and then I will do that and keep talking to you in the closing stretch, because Virginia is winnable. Thanks for being up early, Captain, because there are a lot of people driving the Pentagon right now, as you know, and we want to talk to everyone in Virginia, and we do that all across the state. Let me remind everyone what I began to tell you in the last segment, 25truth.com, 25truth.com. It is the Heritage Foundation explanation of the lies being told by Democrats about Project 2025, which is a think tank compendium of proposals and people. It's got nothing to do with Donald Trump. He is not bound by it. He did not contribute to it. His campaign did not adopt it. It's what conservatives often disagree among themselves about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. I am, for example, a SHIPS Act. All right, I want to throw a lot of federal money at building up the Navy's ability to build ships. Jerry Hendricks, who you've heard on this show, Captain Hendricks, like cat and cow, one of the defense intellectuals making a difference. I think he's over in Europe giving a speech on defense supply chains. All we need to do is build up our capacity to deter China. And we have to deter China because it's become so aggressive in its supply side sabotage. And supply side sabotage, you saw what the result of that was in Israel. So head over to 25truth.com, 25truth.com. I also want to remind everyone that I'm sponsored by AmericanFederal.com. They are our gold people. And Nick Grovich is going to come on later this week, not in a sponsored segment, to talk about why gold this morning is at $2,653 an ounce. You remember that yesterday it was at $2,640 an ounce. Well, yesterday the Dow went up 0.15%, the S&P went up 0.28%, the NASDAQ went up 0.14%, and gold went up. Now, crude and West Texas crude, Brent crude, are both over 70 again. So the markets believe that inflation is coming back. And I have to think that's why gold has gone up. If you want to buy gold today, you call American Federal at 800-221-7694. If you want to find out about selling gold, you call Nick and his team at AmericanFederal.com at 800-221-7694. And as I always tell everyone, use your 3-phone number approach, 800-221-7694. The men and women at American Federal are honest, straightforward. Here's the price of gold today. Here's our commission, depending on how much you want to buy. Here's the commission we'll take from the sale. Here's what you'll probably get for what you are selling. Here's what you will pay probably if you get the cash to us. But you have to get the cash to them first. They do not take credit cards. That reduces their margin. I understand that. Everybody understands that. They are so honest and straightforward. I am so happy Nick Rovich is part of our sponsor team. That's 800-221-7694. Another sponsor of ours, well, first I remind people of the Battleground tour. I'm going out on the road. I'm going to go to Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Ohio. And those are heartland states, and they happen to be connected. So I'll start in Detroit, move through Ohio over to Pennsylvania. If you want to join me and Mike Gallagher out on the road, go to battlegroundtour.com and get your tickets, battlegroundtour.com and get your tickets.
Not far from here, the 4,000-person town of Charleroi. Do people, oh, you know Charleroi? In Charleroi, Pennsylvania, has seen a 2,000% increase in the population of their town. Do you know that, right? They have all, has your town changed slightly? Where are you from, Charleroi? Put up, okay, good. I just took a picture with that handsome guy. So has would you say your town has changed just a little bit over the last couple of months? It's like, is it a different place, totally different place? It's what? It's completely different. Where are the other people that started screaming about Charleroi? Where are they? Okay, has
All
your
right, I am joined by David Drucker. David, you know that Charleroi is one of the towns in which Haitians have made their home under the temporary protected status that they were granted by Biden-Harris. What did you make of Trump spending all day in Pennsylvania yesterday and Kamala Harris going to the border today?
Well, I mean, that kind of tells you where the race is, right? I mean, it, Pennsylvania is the whole ball game in many respects when you look at the electoral college breakdown and how things need to go for both candidates. Even though Trump has an electoral college edge, she, has a vulnerability on border security and illegal immigration, and it's something that she needs to continue to try and shore up at least enough so that the margin by which people prefer Trump over her on the issue of border security isn't so much that she can't win.
David, you're a very astute observer of politics for the Dispatch. I think it is a bad choice to go to the border to highlight that she has been to the border once and it wasn't really a border visit when she went 2 years ago after the disastrous Lester Holt interview. Why would you go and draw attention to your disastrous reign as border czar?
Listen, I actually think that when you have a vulnerability, you attack it and you don't try and run from it. I think Trump's actually been very good at that over the years. Whenever, he has a perceived political vulnerability, real or perceived, he tends to run right toward it, talk about it, and refute it. And this is a better way of dealing with a political vulnerability than trying not to talk about it, because that only highlights it. And look, the vice president can talk about one thing, which is that there was a bipartisan bill on the table in Congress and Republicans didn't want to pass it. Now, I know the argument about the bill's inadequacies, but it gives her at least something to talk about. This may not work, but I think as a matter of strategy, it's better than avoiding the issue.
Well, she's behind by 5 points if we believe the New York Times in Arizona. Other polls show she's behind in Nevada, but that she's ahead in Wisconsin. Why is she going to Wisconsin tomorrow to give an economic address if she's ahead there?
Well, because there is no battleground state where anybody has a lead that they can sit on. That's why. So the smart thing to do for both campaigns, and you're seeing it from Trump and J.D. Vance, you're seeing it from the vice president and Tim Walz, you go to all 7 of the battleground states over and over and over again. I mean, this is one of the reasons why Trump was able to win in 2016, is he blanketed those battleground states while Hillary Clinton sat on a supposed lead that turns out she didn't have when it counted. And in 2020, it was a different sort of a race because of the coronavirus pandemic, but this is a normal race. So you want to hit these states repeatedly, and that's what I expect both of them to do.
David Drucker, Hung Kao was on in the first hour, just ahead of you. He pointed out that early voting in Virginia is up dramatically after the first weekend, and that Republican participation is up dramatically, though Democrat ballots outnumbered. Republican ballots were outnumbered by Democratic ballots, but the margin closed. Is Virginia state number 8? I know the 7: Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. Is Virginia state 8?
Well, I don't think it's state 8 today, but we'll have to see how things look down the stretch. We didn't, think that Georgia was a battleground state in the way it turned out to be early in the 2020 race, but down the stretch, it turned out to be. So what am I looking for? If the campaigns start showing up there with surrogates and then principals, then there's something going on. Obviously, Chris LaCivita, one of Trump's senior advisors, he's a Virginia guy. He'd love nothing more than to flip Virginia. Glenn Youngkin, the governor, is obviously working there to try and make this state competitive. But I'd also caution Youngkin, as much support as he has in the state, his approval ratings have always been good. It came up short in their off-year sort of midterm elections for his gubernatorial term. And so, I'm just in a wait and see mode, but we'll know if people start showing up.
That's why I thought the early vote numbers that Hung Kao gave me was great. He's a great candidate, by the way. He's among the reaches for Republicans. He's not like Dave McCormick or Bernie Moreno in third and fourth place. West Virginia, Montana being the first pickups for the Republicans. But it's interesting that former President Trump was in the Commonwealth this week. Joined by Byron York inside the Beltway, Fox News contributor, columnist for the Washington Examiner, read his daily newsletter. Good morning, Byron. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. Doing well, thank you.
I had a question for David Drucker, and you normally listen, so I'm going to ask you, can Virginia become state 8? There are 7 battlegrounds: Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona. Can Virginia be state 8?
Yes, I think it can. I listened to your conversation with David, and yes, I think it can. I was really struck by the New York Times poll yesterday that was just of the 3 Sunbelt swing states, meaning Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina. But it was they asked one of these questions: have Donald Trump's policies helped you or hurt you? And have Kamala Harris's policies helped you or hurt you? And in every state, nearly a 10-point, by nearly a 10-point margin, more people said that Trump's policies had helped them than said that Harris's policies that helped them. It's like the most basic question in the world. It's not even asking about income. It's not asking about any specific aspect of your life, but your whole life. And so my guess is that is true in Virginia as well. And so when you look at the polls, which would show, I think, Harris leading right now in Virginia, and then you look at that question and you say, boy, I wonder how that's going to actually work out when it comes time to vote.
Byron, you know a lot more than I do about the science of polling, but I have read the Pew Research poll data on polling response bias. Turns out that older left-wing women are far more likely to answer the phone and talk at length to a pollster than young white men. So how do they fix that? I really do not know how you correct that.
Well, I'm not sure. I will say, and I'm not an expert in this either, but clearly after 2016 and then again after 2020, a lot of pollsters did a lot of kind of soul searching and trying to think.
Oh, we lost Byron. I don't know what happened there. This happened with Hung. You're back. Okay, go ahead, Byron.
Okay, I'll stand in the same place. A lot of pollsters after 2016 and 2020 did kind of a lot of soul searching, saying, how can we accurately find the Trump voter in the future? And so you have to think they're trying to do it better. I've for one, have been kind of interested in the New York Times Siena polls, which have shown, I think, more Trump voters than similar New York Times polls showed in 2016 and 2020. So, I mean, they're trying to fix this problem, but the problem that you said, which is that, look, they're just young men are just going to be less patient about spending time with pollsters, than someone retired is. I'm not sure you can actually fix that problem.
Byron York, every day I listen to the commentary podcast, every single day. And until Joe Biden dropped out, the leader of that band, John Podhoretz, would say, I can't believe how bad, meaning tactically and strategically, the Biden campaign is. They're not embracing victory for Israel. They're not embracing immigration reform. They're not doing anything. And then, of course, Biden drops out. They have not yet begun the same song, but I think I want to ask you, is it possible the Harris campaign is just run by bad campaign professionals? Because I think it's a nightmare for her to go to the border. I think that's really stupid because I know the old Chris Matthews line, hang a lantern on your problem, but going to the border is going to illustrate that she's never gone to the border. Then she's going to Wisconsin to give a speech on economics, so she's going to the northern border and she hasn't done any policy yet. These, to me, indicate that her own internal numbers are very, very bad on immigration and very, very bad on Wisconsin.
Well, I would push back a little bit. Yes, her numbers on immigration and the border are terrible. There's no doubt about it. We know that from public polls, and you have to assume that private polls are not going to be very different there. But don't go too far in this. Obviously, in all of the polling averages nationally, she's leading. In the one that I use, well, I think the best, Real Clear Politics average of polls, she's up by 2.2%. Just had two really good national polls, one from NBC and one from CBS. And when you look at the swing state polls, she's leading in maybe 3 or 4 of them out of 7. They're all extremely tight. So you look at that. They look at that, and this is not a disaster. And also, if you look at the enthusiasm level of people who actually go to her rallies. Now, of course, that's a self-selected group. They're going to rallies, but boy, are they enthusiastic. It is sky-high enthusiasm for her, which is what people often feel when a terrible burden has been released, right? They feel happy. So that
it's a relief rally. Yeah. Now, there was a huge
rally.
crowd
Absolutely.
for Trump yesterday in Pennsylvania, and he, of
There was.
course, if you extend my model, they go where they're worried. He's going to Pennsylvania, I think, because that's where you win. If he wins Pennsylvania, almost impossible for me to see how he wins. I want to throw another state aid at you. I'm in Maine. I'll be in Maine for a couple more weeks. We watch Hulu. The Hulu ads are all for Kamala Harris. Now, Maine is not up for grabs. Maine is going to be a Kamala Harris state. Why is she running ads in Maine? Because it includes northern New Hampshire, and there's no other way to get to northern New Hampshire. Have you been studying New Hampshire? Is that state aid?
I have not been studying New Hampshire, so I can't actually tell you about that. But what you're getting at is that are there some states that Trump lost in 2020 that he could pick up in 2024? And his way to victory is, first of all, got to win all the states that he won in 2020, and he won North Carolina in 2020. So if he lost that would be a really devastating blow. Got to win all the states he won in 2020. Then, if he picked up only Georgia and Pennsylvania, he would win. He gets to 270. But if he picks up Georgia and Arizona, and then he picks up Pennsylvania, that's a big win. If he picks up Nevada, that's only 6, doesn't help him a huge amount. So he's got to win one of these 3 Rust Belt states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, or Wisconsin.
And he could win all 3. He could lose all 3. Byron, I gotta finish since you brought up North Carolina. Mark Robinson has gone down in flames. His whole team quit. This is a professional question. Democrats had John Edwards. He had terrible Oppo research on him. Then they nominated Cal Cunningham, another deeply flawed for personal reasons candidate, another Democrat. Now Mark Robinson, deeply flawed for personal characteristics. He's a Republican. Is there no professional opposition research in North Carolina?
What's going on in North Carolina? Listen, I agree. Robinson's a terrible candidate, has no business being a Republican nominee. Republicans have waited too long to act on the problem, so they can't actually get him off the ballot. It's kind of astonishing. And I mean, even before all the revelations that came around from CNN the last few days, he was a terrible candidate. You're right about John Edwards. He was but he was a one-term senator. He actually got elected, and then, in kind of a bad choice, he was chosen to be the vice presidential nominee of the Democratic Party in 2004. And he's been in exile until this recent Democratic convention, where he actually showed up. The ghost of campaign scandals past.
Okay, quick question on Mark Robinson. Andrew Kaczynski, the K-File at CNN, broke the story. Somebody gave him that story, right? Andrew Kaczynski's not running around porn sites trying to figure out who the black Nazi is. So I assumed at first that was the Democrats. Now I think it was the Republicans that take the sting out so that people would split their ticket, vote for Trump at the top and dump Robinson in the second. Just make sure it's in the cycle early and into the mix. What do you think? Was it GOP or Democratic Oppo research?
Actually makes sense. Depending on the timing, if this was not really a leak, but if somebody actually supplied some of this information to CNN, then you have to think, well, how long did CNN take reporting it and checking it out, which could have been quite a while. And my guess is that somebody gave the information to them long enough before the deadline to take him off the ballot and hope that he could be taken off the ballot, and that would be a Republican.
Coming up after the break, Coach Urban Meyer joins me. He and Mark Ingram and Rob Stone have a brand new podcast called The Triple Option. And I was listening to it, the most recent episode of The Triple Option, and learned that 1 million kids play high school football. And I heard some other stuff on there I did not know, and I asked Coach Urban to join me to talk about NIL and about young athletes in college making money for which they are perhaps not prepared and how they ought to go about preparing. I know from his days. My friend Larry Elder was a speaker at Ohio State when Coach Urban Meyer was the coach of the Ohio State University Buckeyes. He tried his best to expose everyone to different points of view about the world, post-football life, the transition. They had Roger Goodell, not my favorite guy. Mark Ingram thinks he hates the Saints, but I know he hates the Browns, but probably there are many people who think that. But that's coming up. Urban Meyer joining me after the break. And if you have a young person who is playing sports with an eye on playing sports in college, and maybe they're in college already and you want to learn about NIL, I don't think there is actually a better person in the world to listen to than Urban Meyer on this, because he is focused on the student and the kid, the young man and the young woman who's getting a lot of money thrown at them. I want to go back over and remind you that yesterday, former President Trump was in Pennsylvania, and I've been playing a couple of these things. Cut number 37 from his Smithton, Pennsylvania press conference yesterday about fracking.
So without your job, which is a good job, an energy job, but if you don't put Trump in, you're not going to have any energy jobs in here. They're not going to let you frack. They're not going to let you frack. You know that. She's never said frack in her life until just a short while ago when she realized her poll numbers were dying in Pennsylvania. They're not going to let you or anybody else frack. And so I just want you to be aware of that when you go and cast your vote. I'm not too worried about the people around this table, I must be honest, but you never know. But
he was meeting with farmers yesterday, and of course farmers are going to vote for Donald Trump overwhelmingly, as are people whose lives depend upon fracking, because they don't believe Kamala Harris. I don't believe her. You might believe her. I just don't believe her. One more cut from the Indiana-Pennsylvania rally yesterday, cut number 43.
Think of the cruelty Kamala Harris is inflicting on the people of Pennsylvania. You live in a small town your whole life. You pay your taxes. You really are exemplary. You pay everything. You do everything. You love your town. You love your country. You know the town so well by name, you're just so proud of it. And suddenly she flies in thousands and thousands of migrants from the most dangerous places on earth, and they deposit them right smack in the middle of your community. And you're a nice person.
That is the entire message for many people. That's all they need to know, is that Donald Trump is going to close the border and he is going to deport people who are dangerous. And that is important to do. And there's a new X account on illegal immigrant crime. I do not follow it. I don't want to know about the horrific things that happen without context. I need to know context, so I'm suspicious of things that just throw up there without context. But I know a lot of people are following it already. For like libs of TikTok, different account. People follow that to find out the terrible things going on in public schools. Again, I always need context, so I don't rely on these things. But I'll tell you, this election, deep currents. I was an early adapter of blogging, then of X, which was Twitter. Now I'm totally into podcasts. They're making me a healthier person because I just keep going and moving until I'm done. I found a new one this weekend, The Triple Option, which features my friend, Coach Urban Meyer, who joins us now, along with Mark Ingram II and Rob Stone. Good morning, Coach. How are you?
Oh, so good to be with you, Hugh. I miss hanging with you.
Well, congratulations on Triple Option. I thought you had enough on your hands every weekend doing the big Fox sports show before the big game, but when do you actually tape Triple Option?
Well, Thursdays I go to Big Noon, and then Sunday I do Big Ten Network, and then now Tuesday we added triple option. Sinclair Broadcasting came to me, and I'll be honest, I didn't know much about. Like you, I just didn't know much about it, and I said, no, I'm not doing that. And I got to pick my hosts, guys I love to death, partners, Mark Ingram and Rob Stone, and we love it. We got the #1 on the podcast already in 2 weeks, so we love doing it.
Well, let me compliment all of them. It's a great balance. I like Mark Ingram bringing things down to the level of the dumb fan like me. When he asked the commissioner of the NFL to explain the kickoff rule, I was so happy. So kudos to Mark Ingram, kudos to Rob, but to you as well. Coach, before I get into the specifics of NIL, I got to tell you, I was having dinner last night, fetching Mrs. Hewitt's on the road, and she's on grandchild duty, like you are, because Nate, as you said, had congratulations on your newest grandchild to you and Shelley. But they were feeding me last night, and they told me about Jeremy Foley and Chip Howard. Mark and Kim, JJ, and Brian were telling me about this. Have you always gotten to pick your athletic directors, or did you inherit those guys at Florida?
I inherited all of them from Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, and Ohio State, and I've had great relationships with Jeremy and Chip. They're still great friends. I had Gene Smith at Ohio State. So no, you don't get to pick them; they pick me, and I have to this day a great relationship with those guys. I love them.
I just think you've been very lucky in who you got to work with, because when the front office is not working well, and some college club just hired a general manager, the first one ever, because of NIL. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about. You talk with Commissioner Goodell about this. There are 1 million young kids playing high school football, less playing college athletics, maybe more total, but less playing college football. And now they have to deal with money. Are they prepared, Urban Meyer, to do that?
No, they're not. And I was shocked. And that's something we started at Ohio State when I found out how ill-prepared these young people are getting to college. So we called it Real Life Wednesdays, and we started #1 every year was fiscal responsibility. And let me say this, Hugh, that I think NIL in its purest form is an absolute. It should have been that way for many, many years. I believe in capitalism. I believe that any human being that lives in this incredible country can profit off the name. However, some of the things going on currently are not NIL. They're pay for play, which I'm not a fan of. I don't believe in that at all. So NIL in its purest form is great, but to answer your question, I think most of them are. You have to prepare these guys for what's. I mean, I used to have NFL players come in every year and put a paycheck right on the table so that the whole team could see it. I had one player ask me who FICA was. Why do we keep paying that guy? And obviously,
That's actually
something
that's a common question among people who get their first check. Who's FICA?
I'm still asking.
Coach, I was asked by the Republican Senatorial Conference more than 2 years ago to go in and be their breakfast speaker. We ended up, much to the dismay of the non-college football fans, an hour and a half on NIL with the Republican senators. One of them said, "What do we do about this?" I said, "I hope nothing. Ohio State has a competitive edge." But I was joking. I really don't know what the Congress should do, if anything. Do you think there needs to be transparency about how much money these kids are making and how? Or is it best left in the darkness where it is right now?
No, of course it's not left in the darkness. And, I grew up in the Woody Hayes, Bo Schembechler era where premium was always placed on education for life after sport. I also had 2 daughters play college volleyball, and I was lucky that my son played college football. So I loved the collegiate experience. My daughter, one of our greatest family moments is when she said in an interview, as she went to Georgia Tech, she said she learned so much more on a volleyball court than she ever learned in a classroom. And I agree with that. I think what you learn as a member of a team, you can't teach that in a classroom. How to solve problems. The world makes you think that race and gender and all this other stuff on a team, that doesn't matter. On a team, and she said this best, is that no, everybody's trying to do one thing, and that's win that game. So I'm a huge fan of that. Congress concerns me. They got their own problems. However, in 5 years, Hugh, I'm not sure people are going to recognize exactly what college sports are. It's fluid right now, and it's alarming. But I'll tell you this: it's never been better as far as a product on the field. So think about there's a good and a bad right now. There needs to be some guardrails to protect these players because I'm concerned that people are making decisions for $15,000-$20,000 because the numbers you hear aren't exactly true. The agents blow them up, they inflate the market. When you're 30 years old, you better have that degree and you better have network system to go get your job.
Well, you said in this edition of the Triple Option that some people are talking about making it a minor league and doing away with class, and you objected to that strongly on the Triple Option, as would I. I'm hoping that rigor arrives in the locker room in the sort of way you ran your programs at The Ohio State University, Florida, Utah, Bowling Green, so that these young men get an education in how to bank the money, because there is a life after football. And I've seen a lot of NFL players who simply do not have any money after 5 years. The posse and the agents take it all.
Yeah, it's shocking, and that's why we did it. You'd think that that would be a priority in high school, teaching fiscal responsibility, and even college, and Hewitt's not. And that's why we did it at Ohio State. I started it at Florida, but really did it at Ohio State, and it was a tremendous success. I had many players thank us for what we did as far as the real life Wednesdays that we put together. As far as teaching players how to interview, we bought them a suit, bought them an iPad, and taught them how to go get a job when you're done playing. I believe in this, and I remember Woody Hayes. How do you solve all problems, Hugh? Education and employment. If you have a job and you're educated, I get that there's a small percentage of players that will never have to work again if they take care of their finances. That's a very small percentage. Most people are going to have to go work for 20, 30, maybe 40 years and handle themselves.
Yeah, NIL could give a lot of young people a start in life that if they put it into a 401 Roth and leave it alone, they'll be fine when they hit my age. But if they spend it and they buy cars and bling, it's not going to work very well. Coach, I also want to talk to you about injuries. You talked to the commissioner about this. By the way, you can tell Mark Ingram, the commissioner does not hate the Saints. He hates the Cleveland Browns. We'll come back to that. But he just hates the Browns. I don't know why, but he does. You talked about injuries. Do you think that the million kids playing high school are being coached the right way, high school football, being coached the right way to avoid those injuries now?
Well, the positive news, Hugh, is that the game of football on the grassroots level, whether it be Pop Warner, whether it be junior high and high school, was on a steady decline. Now it's leveled off and it's starting to rise again. I think the game has never been safer. I know the rules that have been put in place have made some fans very irritated. It's all for the good. I'm a huge fan of the rules that people put in. And the new kickoff rule, I coached kickoff for 30 years in college, and it actually got me near the end of my career where we would see people running down the field at 20-some miles an hour, hit something coming at them going, 16, 17 miles an hour. That's the most dangerous play in sport. And so the NFL is, and Commissioner Goodell said they're still working on it and they're going to have to adapt it a little bit. But I think that's the right play. They have to adapt. So the game's never been safer. Everybody gets pissed off about the targeting rule. It's a great rule. It saved the game. The head.
Yeah, I was angry originally with the call on Newsom on Sunday on roughing the passer, but it turns out he did rough the passer, and you can't hit the quarterback's head; he's unprotected. So I kind of am resigned to that. Let me tell you about the commish and the Browns and get your reaction to this. Young men make mistakes, often very bad mistakes. You know that, and I know that. The NFL has to discipline them, but they take forever to do it. And part of due process is getting to the answer in a hurry, and these young men's lives are frozen. Now, sometimes there's redemption. Kareem Hunt got redemption. Josh Gordon didn't. Mike Hall is in the middle of this process right now because he apparently did a very bad thing. What about speeding up discipline and probation, Coach? Because it just seems to me the NCAA and the NFL are slow as tortoises in meting out just punishment.
I think they're so concerned about getting litigated. I can't speak to the NFL as much, but I can for college. Not every, but the majority of every cases that the NCAA rules on, and they get litigated and they usually lose. And so I think they're horrified of making sure they cover, and they the NCAA, and once again, I'm not speaking to the NFL, I'm speaking to NCAA, they don't have subpoena power. So yes, in my mind, I would do it like they did. I believe it was Des Bryant that when he was at Oklahoma State. I hope that's who it was, but he was untruthful to the NCAA, and they said you can never play again. I think that's what they should. You want to expedite everything? Have a rule that says if you're untruthful, you're as a coach or player, you're done. You can never play college sports or coach college sports again. That would expedite everything, because then you get asked a question, you better answer it correctly, or you can never play again. So if I was Judge
That
Judy,
is the death penalty for lying. I kind of like that. I'll have to think about that because 18 U.S.C. 1001 was abused against a lot of people in the Trump administration. So I'm that's a federal felony, but NC2A isn't a federal organization. Coach, one last question. Coaches are getting younger and younger. I mean, younger and younger and younger in every level. Is that a good thing? Do you think?
I actually talked to Coach Saban off the record about this. I think it was about 2 years ago, and we just had chats about how the game's evolving. I think it's certainly a young man's game right now. The way the game is set up and the way the transfer, players can, we kind of ran it like Navy SEAL training. I wanted to stress the team to the point where they thought about hanging it up. I wanted the elite of elite to be part of teams. I'm not sure you can do that really much anymore. Where, if it gets uncomfortable, sometimes players leave. So it is a younger man's game. Once again, I'm not complaining because I think the game is great. Fan support is awesome. We're going to Colorado at UCF this week, and the crowd's going to be fantastic.
Oh, the game show. I love watching the crowd behind you, even when the Ann Arbor people gave you a hard time. Coach Urban Meyer, brand new podcast, The Triple Option with Mark Ingram II, Rob Stone, is a great addition to your podcasting menu. Thank you, Coach. Press on. Joined by Ryan McKenzie. He's running for Congress in Pennsylvania. Good morning, Ryan. Welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show. Good to have you.
Good morning, Hugh. Thank you for having me on today.
You're following Coach Urban Meyer, which is kind of hard on a radio guest. That's like Penn State having to play in the shoe. So welcome. You've got a big audience, so tell them where Pennsylvania 7th is and why you're running.
Well, first of all, big fan of Penn State. I didn't attend myself, but it is our state school and our favorite college football team here in the state. So I am located in the Lehigh Valley, which is on the eastern part of Pennsylvania, about an hour north of Philadelphia. The district actually runs right up against the border with New Jersey, but it's a great place. I was born and raised here, love it, great community. We have so much to be thankful for that we're growing and prospering, but very concerned about the direction of our country and what the Washington, D.C. elites are doing to everybody here in our community.
Ryan McKenzie, before I forget, what is your website so people who are inspired can make a small dollar donation to help you?
It's McKenzieforcongress.com, McKenzieforcongress.com.
And it's MACK, right? McKenzie, all
correct.
Lowercase. Now, it's got to be a very expensive district, right? I mean, you've got Philadelphia Media Market, Jersey Media Market. What's the cost for a week of TV up there?
Oh, you're talking on the order of $600,000 to $1 million for a week of broadcast TV here in the district. And as we know, the Democrats just have an endless supply of liberal money that comes in from California, New York, all these places all across the country just pour their resources into these swing states like ours and swing districts like the one that I'm running for. So you're talking over $20 million of TV ad reservations just in the upcoming 6 weeks. So that's the barrage that we're going to be facing. But as you and your viewers know, Hugh, it's not always about matching or exceeding the amount of money that you have in a campaign, which we're going to be very competitive. So that's not a concern. But what we're focused on is making sure that we get our message out, because the left, they just want to lie and distort things all the time. And at the same time, we know that the issues that we're focused on, restoring our economy, securing our border, bringing peace to the world, those are the issues that voters care about. We're right on the issues. And my opponent, Susan Wild, is a radical far-left politician. She's wrong on every single one of those things. So we need to make that contrast clear. We'll have the resources to do it, but we could always use more because we are up against an avalanche of money coming in from the far left.
Ryan, what I like about this year, And I'm from Eastern Ohio, so I kind of grew up making fun of Steelers fans and people in Pennsylvania. But Pennsylvania's everything. Dave McCormick, Donald Trump needs Pennsylvania. You need Pennsylvania. You got a couple of swing districts. What is the 7th RD division? What is it? Is it a Democrat +2 or an R +2? What's the division?
So it's rated as an R+2 now. And so that's a big change from the last presidential election when it was rated a D+1. The difference was redistricting happened. It was actually our liberal Supreme Court. They had a choice to make between two congressional districts where they were going to move some portions of the population base. They chose to move that into another district, making this a more Republican area. And so our incumbent, Susan Wild, she came in a wave year of 2018, and it was under an old map, a Democratic map. Again, she's a far left liberal. She has voted with Joe Biden 100% of the time. That's not just a talking point. You can find that on 538.com. But then all of a sudden, redistricting occurred, and now she is very out of step with this district, but we're still stuck with her as our representative. So in November,
And Ryan, we got a minute. Give people some bio. Tell people about Ryan McKenzie.
Yeah, so I'm a 9th generation resident of the Lehigh Valley. That's our home community here. I was born and raised here, went all the way through our local public school system. I went to NYU, got a degree in finance at Stern, and then also got my MBA from Harvard Business School. But now I'm raising my family. My wife and I have a small 5-year-old son who we are loved and so blessed to have. But again, we're very concerned about the direction of our country. Those issues about inflation, which is hurting the middle class and making it hard for people to make ends meet, immigration, wide open southern border. I was just down there in Arizona 2 weeks ago to see the chaos that's being brought into our country with a wide open southern border. Me as a state representative, I've made a lot of changes. I've eliminated taxes, expanded e-verify in the state. So I've worked on many of these issues, but there's only so much you can do. And you see that you have to step up to the federal level if you want to make real change on these big issues.
Well, Ryan, I've got a couple of constituents who are friends of mine, Molly and Mike Lieberman, are Lehigh Valley people, and I know they will vote for you, and they're smart people. And I know that NYU HBS may not mean a lot to a lot of people, but it means you're ready to help. I hope they put you on banking and finance, as a matter of fact, because we need some smart Republicans doing that sort of thing. Closing kick. Let's repeat the website so people can find out about you and help you out, because that's a lot of money in that district to run a week of campaign ads.
You got it. So they can visit McKenzieforCongress.com, McKenzieforCongress.com. There's a lot more information about me, all the positions, what I stand for, and we would love to have their support. This is one of probably only 20 seats in the entire country that will determine the balance of power in the House of Representatives. And if we want to make sure that we have a lineup with a president, a Senate, and a House actually able to pass legislation to help the American people, it starts in places right here like the Lehigh Valley.
Joined by Brett Baer, who is in the Beltway, I assume today. I'm not sure. Good morning, Brett. How are you?
Good morning. Yes, sir. In the Beltway, nation's capital.
I wanted to ask you before we get serious about debates and politics. I just had Coach Urban Meyer on. He's an old friend, and we talked a little bit about NIL and sports and stuff like that, because he has a new podcast out called The Triple Option. Have you ever played golf with Urban?
I think I played in a tournament where he played, but I did not play personally with him. I know.
Okay, he's a pretty good, like you.
Steps.
Like you, he knows his way around a golf course. I'd watch that one on pay-per-view. Brett, let's talk about what Martha asked me on Friday. She said, is there going to be another debate? I said, I doubt it unless Brian Fallon begs you, Martha, and Brett Baer to beg Donald Trump to do one, because he isn't going to do one. He's not going to walk into another box canyon. What's the latest on this?
The latest is I actually believe, this is me talking, that the Harris campaign would do a Fox debate. It's the former president has come to the conclusion that there really shouldn't be another debate. Now, his reasoning, don't know. I always thought that it would be like a bug zapper in the backyard for the former president, and that he couldn't get away from the light of 70 million viewers, and that he would have to eventually, just knowing him, do it if it was on Fox and something he could agree to. I'm getting the sense from him and the campaign that they are moving past it, and it really the holdup is not the Harris campaign and Fox. It is the former president.
Well, I am going to throw in my 2 cents. He ought to sit down if it's you and Martha, because it will be fair. It will be the same format that they used in the first two, but just fair
Exactly.
questions. And that you're no pushover, and Martha's no pushover for anyone. But
Yeah.
it's got to be fair. And the ABC thing left such a bad taste in my mouth. I wouldn't do another network unless it was you and Martha.
Yeah, well, I hope that's the case. If it's not you, I do think it's a missed opportunity. I do know that we are offering town halls with Martha and I too, doing them, and I just think a debate format is a better deal.
Brett, I worked for Richard Nixon out of college, and he had a rule. If you're going to do TV, do live TV, because I saw they're thinking about doing back-to-back 60 Minutes interviews. That's a terrible idea. Richard Nixon refused to be edited, wouldn't do 60 Minutes. Instead, when we were promoting the new book, The Real War, he agreed to sit down live with Barbara Walters, live, on the Upper West Side of New York, and we did that for an hour. She ran out of questions. She was not well prepared, but they couldn't edit him. He was always afraid of television editing. So live, I don't know why. Who come up with the 60 Minutes deal? That is not a good choice.
No, I mean, if you submit to their edit, you do run a risk. I mean, they've had fair interviews before, but they've also had ones where it did not go well. If you remember Leslie Stahl, etc.
Oh yeah, the walkout. I'd forgotten that. So let's turn to the campaign. Vice President Harris is going to the border today. I have been having a debate with Byron York, with David Drucker, about whether that's a good idea. I know Chris Matthews' old rule is when you have a problem, hang a lantern on it. Her problem is the border. And she's going to talk about the bill that never got out of committee, never got even to the floor. What do you think about Harris going to the border? In this case, this might not be the lantern you want to hang.
I agree with you. I think it's such a vulnerability that it does draw scrutiny. It does draw light to it, and the bill only goes so far, and with the right pushback, Republicans, including the former president, could have a retort to that. In other words, there were still 5,000 per week that were being allowed in under the Senate negotiated bill. There were real holes that Republicans had a problem with in the negotiated bill, and it had not been taken care of for 3 years before the negotiations started on that bill. So there's a lot of questions when you draw attention to it.
And Senator Cotton has been very eloquent. There was not Republican support for that bill. Jim Lankford did as well as he could, but there was no wall, and he wasn't going to embody in statute the $5,000 people a day. Brad, I want to turn to the war. I don't know by 6 o'clock tonight when you come on special report what'll have happened, but Israel hit hard yesterday, and this morning Hezbollah sent 100 more rockets, some of them into the Galilee, some of them into the West Bank, Judea and Samaria. What do you think is going to happen there today? And who is Trey Yanks back there? Is Lucas there? Who's in Israel right now?
Nate Foy and Mike Tobin are on the ground. Trey is heading back. He's in New York. It is, I think, a tinderbox. It is as dangerous as it has been. And if you think about, the regional possibilities, the fact that President Biden is at the UN General Assembly this week, talking, I think he'll talk about the wish for a ceasefire. It's farther away than it has been anytime as this war increases. I think it's a really dangerous time.
I agree, and
2 days.
I will be watching tonight because I think by tonight there might be ground invasion. The 98th Division of the IDF is now on the border. That's their elite paratrooper division. That suggests to me they got a plan, and the pagers and the microphones, the walkie-talkies were all part of that. Last question, Brett. In terms of the Oprah sit-down, I keep playing clips from that. I think they thought that was a good idea, and it didn't turn out to be a good idea. What did you make of the Oprah vice president conversation?
Yeah, I think it hit one of her vulnerabilities, which was a very flowery kind of answers that took a long time. I don't think it came off that great. I do think there was this look in Oprah's eyes, like that maybe she needed to save Vice President Harris a couple of times. And I agree with you. I did not come away as a net positive. That said, I will say, Hugh, her numbers on net favorability have gone up significantly, 17 points in a short time. And there are people in independents and disaffected Republicans who somehow are getting to this place where the risk of going to the empty vessel, policy-wise, of Vice President Harris is less. And so maybe this hide the ball strategy is working for them.
It might be. If going to the border, though, it indicates to me contra, that maybe the Oprah thing didn't pan out and that their overnight tracking is in the wrong direction. We will know more. I sure hope Donald Trump accepts the invitation from Fox, because I believe that you and Martha are the last chance for the American people to have an actual honest to goodness debate. Not one question on China. I still think about that. Brett Bear, thank you. We'll be watching tonight at 6 p.m. Always fun to talk to you. I'm joined by Nella Domenici. She's running for Senate in New Mexico. Good morning, Nella. Welcome back. How goes the campaign?
Good morning, Hugh. Thanks for having me. Great to be back. Well, the campaign, we're in the last two innings, and it's a very, very exciting place to be. You know, like all Republicans right now, the issues are really on our side. And those two issues are huge in New Mexico. And so we can really attach responsibility for those problems to the radical progressives that unfortunately dominate our state. And it gives us a real foray into the voter's mind. So our
Nella,
campaign
what's
is
it cost? What's it cost to run a week of ads in Albuquerque and Santa Fe? I don't know what other major markets you have, but I know those two must be expensive.
so actually we're one of the lowest cost races in the entire state. Our race will probably cost 11 million, 12, 10. We don't really know exactly.
Oh,
And
wow.
many of the other big races are north of 100, north of 200. So, but it is, you know, New Mexico's a lower income state. It's a small state population wise. It's not a high net worth state. So we need to continue to raise money so we can continue to run good ads the next few weeks.
Now, in terms of the vice president going to the border today, is that going to help Martin, your opponent? Because it just seems to me she's going to throw a searchlight on the failure of the Biden era to control that border.
You know, it's so obvious, it's just way too little, too late. The border problem, which Kamala Harris and Martin Heinrich have really caused, has been going on for many, many years, and it's really damaging New Mexico. The head of the New Mexico, the most senior FBI professional in our state, is literally quoted as saying, "It's the border problem that has caused crime to permeate New Mexico into every corner of the state." And let me define crime in New Mexico. We are the number one state for crime. We have the highest crime problem of any state. So that can be pinned significantly to the border. That open border has let cartels, gangs, and fentanyl infest our state.
Do voters make the connection between the crimes, Martin Heinrich, Kamala Harris, and the border? Is it something you have to explain, or is it something that they know?
Great question. Unfortunately, it's something that we really have to explain, and it's not hard to explain, but it takes time and money, and we have to get in front of the voter to make sure they understand that.
Does the average voter understand cartels have monetized illegal immigration? This is the big difference from 4, 8, 12. I've been doing this since 1990. The border has come and gone, but this is the most it's ever been an issue in Senate and House races, as well as the presidential race, because people are feeling overwhelmed and it's dangerous.
So, Albuquerque is one of the most unsafe cities in America, and unfortunately, it's actually ranked in the top 20 most unsafe cities in the world. And so, voters definitely are starting to really be heavily concerned about the crime, such that they're considering moving. Their neighbors are moving. They know people are choosing not to come to our state. They hear about people considering tourism to the state, but they decide not to go to New Mexico because of the crime. So they're seeing it in their everyday life, but they're also feeling it in major, major situations. So, for example, there was a multi-month um, operation to identify stash houses, where that's where the cartels are keeping immigrants of all sorts, and they're horrible situations. And 15 stash houses were just identified in Albuquerque in the month of August, and 90 people were rescued from those stash houses. So that really confirms this is not a casual criminal problem. This is a cartel problem.
Yeah, because casual criminals don't buy houses with cash and then pack them full of people who are waiting to be distributed into human trafficking networks. Nella, the District of Columbia has spiraled down in the last 4 years as well in terms of violent crime. Is the crime in Albuquerque obvious to everyone, or is it secret crime like trafficking, or is it violent crime like the district has carjacking?
So it's twofold. So it's not secret. It's so bad it can't be secret. For example, in August, there were 17 homicides. If that had been, and we only have 2 million people, so if that had been in Florida, that would have been 170 homicides. They have 10 times as many people as we have. And that would have been a huge newsworthy item in the entire country. But people know this, and every single day you open the Albuquerque Journal, and on the front page is a story about crime. So people are finally realizing that crime is part of everyday life in Albuquerque, and parents don't even want their kids to go to UNM. They're scared for them to go there. And people are afraid to go to restaurants and park their cars outside the restaurant. They don't know what will happen to the car when they're inside the restaurant. People who live in what used to be safe neighborhoods are afraid to have their children go to gas stations alone after 7 p.m. So crime is really pervasive. But there is a second part of crime which is not reported. I've spent lots of time with police and sheriff. In fact, I spent an entire day driving with a sergeant in the most dangerous part of Albuquerque, and I started with his shift, which began at 5 in the evening and lasted till 11:30. Most people don't understand a couple things. All the horrible crime that goes on the border that relates to like child prostitution, that doesn't get enough press, and it's very, very common. In addition to that, the fentanyl issue is horrible in Albuquerque. There are thousands and thousands of addicts, and I'm sure fentanyl deaths in our country soared from 3,000 to 75,000 over a 12-year period. 75,000 deaths per year is more than all of the deaths we had in Vietnam by a lot. So fentanyl is a huge issue. But like, for example, in Albuquerque, I spent 3 hours driving around what's called the war zone. The war zone is a 4 by 4 mile area, the poorest and most criminal infested area. And every single block was overflowing with people just stoned out of their mind on fentanyl. And the reason is because the border is so wide open. Fentanyl tablets cost 30 to 35 cents. So fentanyl is
Whoa.
basically free and accessible. And what the radical progressives have done by opening our border and letting that fentanyl flow through, they have created a group of addicts for whom drugs are cheaper than ever and more accessible than ever. And those addicts will become a huge, difficult problem for our country to address in a humanitarian way. We have to help those addicts with their addiction. And this is a crisis which is not covered adequately at all. The only
Nella,
reason I
thank you
know
for
it's
telling us that. I want people to know how they can contribute to your campaign. Is it just nellaforsenate.com?
Yep, NellaForSenate.com. We'd really appreciate it. We have 6 more weeks, and we have to keep raising money and keep running ads and keep explaining these problems to New Mexicans.
Keep coming back on, Nella. This is early for the New Mexico audience, but I'm hoping we put up at YouTube, people will listen to you because none of this has to be this way. I mean, it's a choice the country made via the president and the vice president and a Democratic Senate with Martin Heinrich to open the border. It's a choice. We can close the border. Do voters know that?
They're finally realizing it, yes, but it took this massive crisis to occur.
Well, God
So
bless your efforts.
we
Go
need
ahead.
money to keep ads to keep explaining this to the average New Mexican. So I appreciate
Well
all the
put.
support.
Well put. NellaForSenate.com. NellaForSenate.com. Go and help her. Donald Trump was talking about the border yesterday in Pennsylvania, and I want to play one of his longer clips here. Here he is talking about Pennsylvania cut number. Which one do I want to use? There's so many. Cut number 36. Actually, I'm going to have him talk about farming.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you. And a special group of people, the farmers. Nobody's done for farmers what I've done. Unfortunately, they haven't followed through. We made a deal with China. It was one of my best deals that I made. I made a lot of good deals, but we made the USMCA, Mexico, Canada, which was terrific. But we had a specific deal with China where they were going to buy $50 billion worth of farm product. And it's interesting how we got there, because when the negotiation was going on, and it was a nasty negotiation, and I said to the farmers, just stick with me, because we're going to do it. They're great negotiators. They're not going to go that fast. Just stick with me, because you never had anybody negotiating for the farmers before me as president. And my people, I said, what are the numbers we're talking about? And they said 15 million, 15, not 50. I said, all right. So it's $15 billion worth of product that they were going to buy, because they've been taking advantage of the farmers for years. This was like a penalty to China.
That's how he began. He began the morning talking with farmers, and then in the afternoon, he's Indiana, Pennsylvania. He says this, cut 44.
And not far from here, the 4,000 person town of Charleroi. Do people, oh, you know Charleroi? In Charleroi, Pennsylvania, has seen a 2,000% increase in the population of their town. Do you know that, right? They have all. Has your town changed slightly? Where are you from, Charleroi? Put up. Okay, good. I just took a picture with that handsome guy. So, has your would you say your town has changed just a little bit over the last couple of months? It's like, is it a different place? Totally different place? It's what? It's completely different. Where are the other people that started screaming about Charleroi? Where are they? Okay, has your beautiful town changed? Yes. It's you can't do it.
You know, I think the more he talks about the crisis, like Nella Domenici just did, straightforward numbers. Who knew that about Albuquerque? I haven't been in Albuquerque in years. I used to go there fairly frequently for a variety of reasons, but no longer. I haven't been there in a while. And I went to go to Santa Fe almost every year when John Agresto was running St. John University. Beautiful place. It's very sad to hear the land of enchantment has gone downhill that way, but you can't leave the border open and not expect that to happen. Let me also tell you, breaking news, Lebanese security sources tell Reuters the target of a strike minutes ago in Beirut was the missile commander of Hezbollah. And the IDF's chief of staff said they are not letting up. They are going to keep up the pressure on Hezbollah. Hezbollah doesn't have the advantage of hostages that Hamas did, where Israel had to go slowly and very carefully. They do not have to worry about hostages, and they're not going to get any Israelis for hostages, because Hezbollah is going to be defeated. As Donald Trump says, Israel has got to win, and fast, as opposed to Kamala Harris. We need to get a deal. We need to get a deal. We have to have a deal. No, we don't. I am very optimistic about the election, because I think voters are smart. I don't know that they talk to pollsters anymore. I don't know which polls to believe. I don't know if it's a jump ball like they all say, or if Trump's got a 5-6 point lead. You wouldn't know. I just don't believe polls because of what Pew Research calls polling response bias. It is a fact that older left-wing women are eager to talk to pollsters, just as eager to talk to them as young men don't want to speak to them. So it's very hard to model an election, but here's the overwhelming fact. The conversation I had with Nella Domenici is going to haunt me, because I didn't know what was going on in Albuquerque. And I did not know that it is among the 20 most dangerous cities in the world. Do you know what that means? That includes Rio, which has the favelas, which is where the top of the mountain, the very poor, they're run primarily by cartels. It's more dangerous than parts of Mexico, which are completely run by cartels. More dangerous than northern Nigeria, where Boko Haram continues its massacres. Albuquerque, one of the 20 most dangerous cities in the world. Why is that? Kamala Harris is going to the border today, and she was the border czar. She was named that by President Trump. He did not use the title border czar, but he said, "You are in charge of stemming the flow." Direct quote, stemming the flow. He also charged her with getting at root causes, which she did nothing about. The root cause is that the cartels have monetized moving people across the border. They make a lot of money because they have a lot of guns, and they intimidate or corrupt the police forces through which they are moving the people, the towns of the police forces, and the federales to some extent. I don't know how Mexico fixes its corruption process, but when you hear that 19 stash houses jammed, just overflowing with humans being trafficked, and you ponder for a bit the tragedy, the horror of child prostitution that is underway. We got a lot of sick people in this country, a lot of twisted people. There are a lot of reasons for that. And we have a lot of fentanyl addicts, and that's addiction. It's not the same thing as abusing children the way that the cartels are. They're just in it for the money. They are amoral. They will be judged, right? Catholics know the final four things are death, judgment, heaven, and hell. And they will be judged, not by me and not by you. But it is up to us to put people in the Senate like Nella Domenici, who knows how to get stuff done. We talked before about her Harvard Business School background, about her dad being a senator forever. She knows how D.C. works. She knows how the Senate works. She knows how New Mexico works. She will work on the border. A Republican majority will pass a real border bill, not a pretend border bill. It will shut the border. It will finish the wall, and it will expand the Border Patrol. And with enough Republicans, you need 51, but 55 are better, right? 56 are better. Larry Hogan in Maryland. Please vote for Larry Hogan in Maryland. Please vote for Hung Cao in Virginia. Please vote for Mike Rogers in Michigan, Bernie Moreno in Ohio, of course, Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania, Nella Domenici. I am forgetting some other ones. Eric Hovde in Wisconsin. Obviously, Tim Sheehy in Montana over John Tester. And that's only 8. I've forgotten 3 others that are out there that are competitive races that Republicans can win. What I am praying for is that the pollsters are very, very wrong again. They can be very, very wrong. I remind everyone 4 years ago in Wisconsin, the ABC Washington Post last poll of that state said that Joe Biden was going to win Wisconsin by 17%. Joe Biden won by less than 1%, by 0.63% to be specific. What does that tell you? They had no idea what they were doing, but they put it out there anyway. Always. I don't know that they've ever made a mistake in polling to benefit Republicans. In my adult life, I've been following this stuff closely since 1974, my first campaign, before many of you were born. I have been involved in politics. I just follow it. I don't think I have ever seen a significant material polling error made on behalf of a Republican. Because if you can suppress the vote. If people don't think they have a chance, they don't vote. They don't get out there. Nella Domenici can win. Hung Cao can win. Larry Hogan can win. Eric Hovde in Wisconsin can win. I think Tim Sheehy is winning. I know Governor Justice is winning I think Bernie Moreno is winning in Ohio. I think Dave McCormick is winning in Pennsylvania. I'm forgetting somebody. I'm sorry. But wherever you are, get out and vote early. In Pennsylvania, you can go request your ballot right now. In Virginia, you can go find an open balloting places. And even if you live in a deep blue city, even if you're inside the Beltway in Virginia, go and vote. Keep the margin close so that downstate can deliver the rest of the state to Donald Trump and Hung Kao and the Republicans running for Congress.